This week on Resonance Deep Dive, Chadtopia, the legendary caster for games like StarCraft and Mount and Blade.
Messing around with a friend of mine when we were sort of like 18, 19, recording sort of joke sketches and stuff on the audio, on the tape recorder, and then playing it back, and we thought we were hysterical. I want to get more views, but also not at the expense of my mental health and the enjoying the games. You know, at the moment, YouTube is not a job for me, it's a hobby.
You mentioned earlier that it was sort of Malekith that got you into casting Mount and Blade stuff. How did you two meet? Hello everybody and welcome back to episode 3 of what I think I'm calling the Resonant Deep Dive, where we go and get a YouTuber on, and we just talk about some things. Episode 3, we've got on Chadman, Chadtopia, the one Chad. How are you doing, mate?
I am not too bad. You know, just finished a day's work, but working from home, people will say, yeah, it's a bit of a struggle. No. To be honest, I'm a computer nerd. I'm sitting on my YouTube desk. I'm working from home. The commute is now, instead of 45 minutes drive, it's 6 feet walk. So
that's not bad.
I can deal with it.
I think especially for us people that are used to sitting at computers all day, I think it hasn't been too bad. My mum, who was a teacher, she messaged me like, how do you spend more than like 2 hours sitting at a computer? Because she just can't cope with it. But I think, have you fared all right during lockdown?
Yeah, it's not been too bad. I will say that I've drunk more wine in the last year and a half than I've drunk previously in the last 15 years.
I see.
So that tends to be just bursts. It's not like constant. But generally speaking, yeah, it's not too bad, you know, in the world. I mean, the only thing obviously is when you do go out, we have to wear the mask, and I put gloves on as well because I'm technically an at-risk person.
Yeah, and as a fellow glasses wearer, wearing a mask is the worst thing. Trying to
just jets upwards, you know.
I don't bother wearing glasses to the shop because I can't be bothered to do the whole thing because I had headphones on, so I can't be bothered to take the headphones off, take the glasses off, put the mask on, put the headphones back on every time.
I tend to put like the glasses down here and then just take them and put them on quickly for what I need to do, and then take them off and. Yeah, it's an almighty great faff, but considering the alternative, it's a minor niggle.
That's very true. So, as a YouTuber, how did you start? How did you get into it? Do you want to tell people a little bit about what your channel is and then how it really started on YouTube?
Yeah, my channel is basically, I specialize in sort of live game commentaries of large battles, specifically Mount and Blade. But mostly Napoleonic Wars, also native. I've done some Bannerlord. I've also done some professional stuff as well for Battlefield 4 and commentating on some of the ESL as well. My YouTube channel started sort of 2012. I think my friend Malekith had just started a channel, and, you know, I'd been thinking about it. But my time in commentary actually started probably when you were still a glint in the milkman's eye, back in 1999.
I was born in 1999.
See what I mean? And essentially what it was is I've been watching a game called Tribes, Starsiege Tribes, back in 1998.
Was that the first video you have on your channel, that game?
It's not the first video, but it's one of the videos is on there. And essentially, I was watching a station called TSN, Tribe Shoutcast Network, and they were doing live commentaries on matches. And then what you could do is you could, if need be, because this was all audio, there was nothing video at all. You would literally listen into the broadcast live, and then later on, if you wanted to, you could get the demos from the players and then watch the demo while you were listening back to the recording, for example.
I see.
So it was essentially radio, really. Radio commentary, and I wanted to get into that, and I did. I ended up creating my own station, the Euro Shoutcast Network, with another guy who hosted the servers, because what would happen is everyone would use Winamp, and I would use the Shoutcast broadcast plugin to broadcast to a target server. Everyone else would then connect to that target server, and that would stream the audio. And so I ended up doing that for about a year, and then ended up joining TSN, ended up doing things like I've casted Counter-Strike, I've casted COD 1, I've casted COD 2, obviously Tribes, multiple Tribes versions. It's just one of these things that I've done since forever. And when I was thinking about YouTube, Malik had said to me, well, why don't you commentate on one of our siege battles? I said, okay. Never played the game before, so I bought the game, installed it, and commentated on one of the first 77 YI siege battles. The thing I remember most about that video is that there was a graphic glitch in it that basically made it look like it was all crisscross on the shadows, which I fixed for the next one. And essentially have just gone on from there with broadcasting. People ask me to broadcast competitions. I get requests to just record line battles. And it's just gone on from there, really. And I play all sorts of other games on my channel as well. Occasionally do opinion pieces, stuff like that. I'm looking into doing more of those. I've got one on the burn at the moment, which I'm in the process of writing up. So as it's writing a script that this is the problem that George Lucas had. You can write it, but can you write it so it can be said? The two are very disparate.
I always find when I do script stuff, especially like a few months ago when that was basically everything I was doing, I'd come to record it and then I just think none of this actually makes sense in any sort of sentences. It's sort of just mind farts onto a paper. And then I sort of have to like stop the recording and be like, okay, what am I actually trying to say here?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the thing is not only what you're trying to say, but the way in which you're trying to say it. Because I mean, I've done voiceovers and all sorts of things like that. And one of the things you learn from that is intonation, how to specify, put like a emphasis on certain points that you want to, and it becomes quite a bit of sort of oral gymnastics, if you pardon the expression. That sounds really wrong, but you know what I'm saying. It's not as straightforward. In the same way that casting is not as straightforward as some people think.
Yeah, definitely not. Speaking about casting, if we go back further, where did that passion and love for talking over and commentating start? Were you one of those kids that used to sit in front of the TV and talk over everything that was going on and stuff like that?
No, it's never that bad. I remember messing around with a friend of mine when we were sort of like 18, 19, recording sort of joke sketches and stuff on the audio, on the tape recorder, and then playing it back. And we thought we were hysterical. Probably the rest of the world may not have agreed with that, but I don't know. Even as a kid, I've been on stage and done stuff, things like that. I mean, it's always been a part of me. The thing that is the most ironic about it, now, you know, obviously, we've known each other for a while. You know how much I talk, as this recording will probably show.
We'll see about the time code on
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're now into hour 63. And basically, I was born with a cleft palate, which means the roof of the mouth wasn't actually properly formed. So I had to have an operation when I was a baby. And for a while, my parents were not sure if I'd be able to talk at all.
Really?
Yeah. And my mum kind of summed it up in one word, in one sort of sentence. She said, yeah, first we weren't sure if he would be able to talk at all. And then we realized he wouldn't bloody shut up. And that's been it, really. So this verbal sort of sense of diarrhea of words coming out has always been a thing. Because of my mum and my dad, I've always been quick with the comebacks and just the things off the top of my head. I did a sports broadcast with my dad on radio one occasion, and I was able to do everything off the top of my head just from reading the paper in between the advert breaks on subjects to talk about. So I'm good at operating, you know, doing things. I mean, you know as well as I do, if you're doing a live broadcast, well, you may not have done one, but the hardest thing to do is suddenly when they're saying, oh, it's not working, you need to fill.
Yeah, just talking is much harder than people think, just randomly talking.
The discussions that I've had in fill airtime have been, to say that they are bizarre is a galactic understatement.
But they're often some of the best conversations, the most interesting ones.
Yeah, I mean, I remember having a conversation about how come is it only the Hulk's shorts don't tear.
Oh, I think that is That's a well-known theory that I think no one's ever worked out. I don't think. Is there any canon explanation for that?
I don't know. Maybe he's wearing lycra shorts underneath for in case of sort of Hulk-related bursting.
But they're depicted as like denim every time he wears them.
Yeah. I don't know. Or maybe they're just sort of set to split in only a certain way. I don't know. But either way, these are questions the universe needs to answer. And so you talk about anything off the top of your head when you're trying to fill for time. And so depending on who you're talking to means you can talk about the game, you can talk about the game you've just seen, the games that are coming up, all that kind of stuff. And that, I think, is where a lot of the practice and the professionality can come from, having those moments where you can keep the audience engaged in what you're saying. Because in theory, I mean, I even actually did an interview for BBC Click. And I said, a good commentator should be able to make a car park interesting.
Yes, definitely.
Or a traffic jam.
When it comes to commentators, were there any people that you sort of idolized and sort of wanted to try and replicate that style? Or was it sort of you just working it out on your own and coming up with a way to do it?
Kind of working it out on my own, but there were some guys who did it, who the original TSN guys. There were two guys called Wonderdog and Beatstick. Two guys who were, one was basically completely hyper and over the top. And the other guy who was a very, very dry, very sarcastic, but also very quiet and very calm. And they were like chalk and cheese, the two of them. But they made a superb pair when they were commentating. My personal favorite would be a guy who was known online as Pub Night. He is consistently, I would say, the funniest guy I've ever seen broadcast, consistently, but also switched on to, aspects around what's going on, things of that nature. He's just, I used to literally stay up until 2:00 in the morning to tune in live to his show when he did them. And then basically go and get a bacon roll on the way home and disappear into a shroud of Red Bull to try and make it up for the next day. But yeah, I mean, I think Pub Night, was one of those. And because I have such good memories of that, I have all of their recordings on my hard drive from when they started. Wow. Yeah. And there's some absolute classics in there, some really funny moments. I mean, some of these guys, I've also worked with Demon on a couple of times. Wonderful guy, extremely talented, extremely professional, and I've also worked with Dogbutt, who now works for Creative Assembly.
Yes, I recognize that name. Yeah.
And so he was my Battlefield forecaster partner. He was basically the brains, and I was just the brawn, just the talking. I did all the talking. He did the sensible intelligence stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's just a case of being inspired by other people really around you. For me, that sort of urge to try and be better, but also try and find your own particular style, which I think I have, but I am also my own worst critic. So I always watch my videos back and think, if I repeat words more than once, it bugs me to the point where I try not to do it again.
What I'm interested to know is, a lot of people that get into the commentating and shoutcasting sort of thing, there's sort of, I don't know, for me at least from where I look, it seems like there's a split. There's either games or sport sort of in the main like big places. Why did you go towards games? Was sport ever your thing or not really?
Sport, yes, no. I mean, I was into swimming. You can't really... swimming and gymnastics is what I did as a kid.
Yeah, with swimming, there's only so much you can say about the person going back and forth.
Exactly. Although saying that, I mean, one of the things, the slight aside, when they see you do the diving and you watch the camera and the camera actually goes down with the diver, that system was made by the same guy who invented the Steadicam, of which I have one.
I see.
Yeah, and I've been trained on them. So, but that aside, it was a case of I was always into games. Played games, arcade games as a kid. Still play them now when I can, just from nostalgia value. Remember spending £50 in Trocadero in like 3 hours on one occasion when I went there with my friends. I've always loved arcade games, and so to me, games was more of a simpatico connection. I enjoyed sport, but I enjoy snooker. You don't get a huge amount of high-speed commentaries on snooker.
Not massively. You mentioned earlier that it was sort of Malekith that got you into casting Mount and Blade stuff. How did you two meet, and how did you sort of become associated? Because I think most people would associate you with the 77Y if they were going to associate you with some sort of regiment. How did that come about?
Yeah, it's kind of funny actually, because I told this story at Malekith's wedding. I was one of the best men at his wedding.
You were there? Right.
Yeah. And I have to preempt it, because the little precursor before we start. No, I was not investigated by Operation U Tree. Just want to make that clear.
I am excited to see where this story goes now.
So essentially, I met Mal on the internet when I was 27 and he was 13.
I see. Okay. That's where it comes
now. Exactly. See what I mean? But we were playing a game called Air Attack on Wireplay, and we just happened to face off against each other quite often. Mutual respect for opponent, all that kind of stuff, and you just happened to chat. I had no idea he was 13, but during the course of
that's just what we're talking about. Operation U Tree. That seems like the quote. I had no idea.
Exactly. Yeah, I had no idea. Yeah, I didn't know I didn't know he wasn't legal. But yeah. So yeah, that's the thing. You see, I mean, I don't know if you can groom someone for online gaming, but anyway. So essentially, he and I just chatted. We became friends, and we just played together quite often. And over the course of many years, we would play other games together, and it's just gone on from that, really. So he and I have been, close friends for quite some years. And yeah, so that's literally, I was always talking to him about playing games together, because when we play games together, he is the intelligent, thoughtful, strategic one, and I'm just the loud, obnoxious one.
Yeah, I think you get that from both of your content side by side.
So yeah, that's how I got to know Malekith, and how I got to know the 77Y, and off the back of that, how I got to know the entire Napoleonic Wars and Mount and Blade community.
So did he just invite you to? Were you part of the regiment, or were you just sort of on the sideline?
No, he just said, "Did you want to?" I said, "I'm looking to commentate some games. You got any ideas?" And he goes, "Why don't you commentate one of our sieges?" And so the first few commentaries of Mount and Blade that I did were for the 77Y, but other people from other regiments were enjoying it and watching it. And then they said, "Would you commentate on one of our line battles?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, happy to." I was not tied into 77Y specifically. And it just went from there. And next thing you know, loads of people are asking me to commentate on their line battles, because for me, when I do the line battles, I think everyone's wonderful. I don't root for one team or the other. I think they're all fantastic, and they all look very handsome in their uniforms. And I will then equally laugh at either side if they die in a horribly ridiculous manner, which does happen. Multiple cannonballs, all that kind of stuff. The officer hunting cannonballs, which were a common thing in Napoleonic Wars. So it means that I can make fun of all of them, but also commentate on the epic moments that they have with a sort of a semblance of impartiality.
How much would you say that sort of contributed to your growth? Because I think most people that are watching this, and well, me specifically as well, knew about your channel from that. I remember being in these line battles. The first regiment I joined was the 41st. And I think there's a few videos that I've seen where they've been in battles that you commentated, and I'd always look for my name and stuff like that. And I was I think I was 13, 14 years old. When but I remember at the time, I was terrified of those events and regiments. The 41st was the first one I joined when I was about 13. And I remember the leader, the major, would always get angry at me because I had a really high-pitched voice at that time. And that leader was Major Marks, who went on to develop Prime and Load. So,
oh, right. Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it's kind of weird how that comes right around. But how would you sort of say the main bulk of your channel growth came around the Napoleonic Wars?
Definitely, without a doubt. I mean, obviously, there was the biggest video on my channel is actually for a native battle.
Native, isn't it? That's 800k now, was it?
Yeah, about that. Yeah, which is continually staggers me, even to this day. But I just enjoyed commentating on events, it was just fun, and because there were silly moments, because there always is in Napoleonic Wars, and Mountain Blade players especially, there's a certain nervous energy that's ticking away at them, that they've got to do something while they're standing there twiddling their arms or waiting for something to happen. So there's never ever something where they'll be standing there doing nothing. They'll be either headbanging or they'll be punching each other, or something will be happening.
There'll be a private that accidentally team kills the officer.
Exactly.
They were the best moments.
Yeah, it's never a dull moment, and that's part of the fun of it. But yeah, I would say that Mountain Blade generally has contributed to a large majority of the size of the channel as it stands at the moment.
Can you give some of your highlights for the Napoleonic Wars events? I think one of my favorite ones for your videos was an older siege battle, and there was a river going across with the small rowboats, and they were famous for being death traps. And it was just a whole regiment gets into a rowboat, it gets hit by a cannonball, and they all go down. What are some of your best moments in Napoleonic Wars battles?
Yeah, there are some moments like that where, for some reason, Malekith had some kind of irrational fear of bagpipes. So I always used to play bagpipes, and he'd come out and persecute me. That was always entertaining. I think one of the funniest is actually from a Mountain Blade mod called North and South, based on the American Civil War. And there was two that I can think of specifically. One was where Hinkle, who was one of the developers of the mod, was playing Abraham Lincoln, and he was the only man left, and he came riding over on his horse, and it was one man versus Abraham Lincoln, and he's like, "Come on, I'll take you on, I'll take you on." Abraham Lincoln threw an apple at him and killed him. And that just moment was, I had hysterics over that moment as it happened. I can't find the video. I need to find it again if I can. The other one was one in the Napoleonic Wars where it was I think it was one of the guys says, "Yeah, I'll take you on 1v1, all the rest of it." And it was outside of a field. He comes charging into 1v1. Just as he's about 10 feet away from his opponent, his teammate kills him with a flying cannonball.
I think it might be on Malekith's channel, but isn't it like the biggest cannonball kill in Napoleonic Wars or something like that?
24 people with one cannonball.
See, I don't
see a Doomfinger.
That's the thing about Mountain Blade, and specifically Napoleonic Wars. I feel like that wouldn't happen in any other game, and I think that's what really brought people to it, especially me, because I was watching those videos like, this can't be real people, right? And it is, and it's mad. Did you and Malekith sort of work? Because I know you did a few co-commentaries and stuff together. Did you was it a plan to sort of just grow together and make videos with each other in that way?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. I mean, he's always. Some of the games he likes, I may not necessarily, may not blow my skirt up, so to speak, and vice versa. But it was never a sort of plan to grow together. It was just a case of do what you enjoy and go from there. I mean, Malekith obviously got a lot of support from his Mountain Blade stuff, the warband, and all the rest of it, But, he also had a regiment to run as well. And that was a different kind of pressure and different kind of expectation. I didn't have to worry about that. And also, that's one thing I never wanted to do. I never wanted to join a regiment, because then all my videos would be, oh, he's looking at it from the point of view of this regiment and therefore slagging us off. So to remain impartial meant I had to stay out of regiments and the associated drama that comes with it, as we all know, on online communities. So we never really grew at the same sort of speed, because I specifically did my commentaries and sort of games that I liked, sort of small games, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, the Battlefield 4 stuff. One of my favorites was the original theme, Hospital, which was immensely good fun. And so we kind of, our channels sort of started from the same sort of, the same sort of tree, but have just branched off in different directions.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is interesting, how for a lot of people that I've noticed on YouTube, and let me know what your thoughts are on this, but in terms of the actual YouTube content, I don't feel like Bannerlord had the same impact on YouTube as sort of, or at least community, that Warband did. And that might just be down to the fact that there isn't private servers and there aren't those community events. But how do you feel sort of that Mount and Blade when it came with Bannerlord? How was that different for when it came recording? Because you don't seem to be doing as many Bannerlord stuff as you did with Warband.
Yeah, the primary thing is the private servers and those events. That is what most of it came from, because these people, they got their own servers. They would run events on a regular basis. They still run events on a regular basis, and it's just, without that, there's that, people aren't interested in seeing their exploits, so to speak, being recorded and commentated on and all the rest of that. And I think that's probably one of the biggest, as I see it, failings of Mount and Blade Bannerlord at this current moment.
Yeah.
Is the lack of private servers to essentially invigorate the community and encourage them to basically hold these events, and so therefore other people can cover them. They can release videos of themselves playing in it, all that kind of stuff. It seemed a little bit short-sighted, in my opinion.
I 100% agree. I remember, like, I was making videos. Well, obviously I was making videos before Bannerlord even came out, but in some of the videos I was talking about how surely there's going to be private servers. It would be stupid of them to not release private servers. Maybe not initially on release, but a few weeks after, maybe even like a month or two after. And I mean, it's been over a year now, and they've mentioned that it's something that they're working on, but we have no idea release date. And I don't know, it feels, Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord feels different as a game. I think for me, Warband had that warm, like, nostalgia sort of community feel, and I just don't think Bannerlord has replicated that community feeling.
Not yet, no. I mean, part of it is because of going into battles means going in via matchmaking, and I tend to find that matchmaking removes a lot of the choice as to where you go, because at least with Bannerlord or playing Warband, you could actually choose which server you were going on to. Those kind of communities and sort of connections grow up as people play on the same server together regularly. Exactly the same thing has happened on every single game I've played. There would be a list of maybe 5 servers that you would play on regularly, because you knew the people on it, you knew it was admin, you knew it was looked after, and you knew it would be fun. And right now, without that, it means that they've kind of taken the wind out of the release of Bannerlord, and that they could have made use of that to kind of fuel continued interest and everything else that's going on relating to that.
Yeah, I do. I've thought about this quite a lot recently when it, like, with making videos. I'd love to hear your opinion on it. It's whether it was a good idea in the long run to release into early access, because I mean, I love the game, like the single player that stays in. I have so much fun, especially with mods. Like, I think what Bannerlord has done, technically speaking, with letting the community, even in the early stages of modding tools, what the community has done is mental. And sort of like the Bannerlord Online mod blows me away how someone's managed to do something like that. But I'm very happy that it came into early access because I got to play it. But I don't know if it was the good idea in the long run, because as you say, when Bannerlord gets a full release date and it comes with private servers maybe, and it comes with full modding support, and it's like the full game, will anyone really care?
Will people have moved on to something else by then? Because gamers are notoriously fickle, in my experience.
I'm not necessarily sure if it will be people moving on. I think Bannerlord will have that longevity that Warband will have, but I don't know, it was that massive build-up and excitement to Bannerlord, and then like it came out as a really good single-player experience, but it didn't come out as the full game. And what do you think about that decision in the long term, whether that was a good idea or not?
The thing is, it's difficult for us to really judge because we don't know what the development process has been for Bannerlord. Obviously, it's been in development, technically speaking, for 8 years. And so we don't know how many times they've gone back and done things and so on and so forth. Speaking just from a sort of community side of things, obviously people were hungering for it, but I think it might have been better if they'd waited a little bit longer until they knew they could bring out private servers. So that they could bring out the private servers and say, this is the state of the game at this current moment. Obviously, modding tools means that, I mean, there are some people out there who are so incredibly talented that You just want to give them all the tools that they can just to go ahead and make whatever they want to do. Modders, when you think about it, look back at it, modders have been the lifeblood of so many gaming communities throughout the world. I mean, just look at Counter-Strike. That started off as a mod for Half-Life, 1.3, 1.6, then on to Counter-Strike Source, and it's still going and it's still very, very, very popular. And part of the reason for that has been the core gameplay has been solid. And also the support for the game has been there so that they can do whatever they need to do with respect to that particular game. And so I think it's a combination of two factors, the modding and the private servers, really, because modding also helps increase the hype, because people are thinking, oh, right, when's the next, North and South mod, or, when's the next Iron mod coming out, or something along those lines, because modders are just sitting there waiting to take control and do what they need to do. They just don't have some of the tools they need in order to do it. And I think that's the biggest failing at the moment, is that to give them what they want so that they can essentially sell your game for you, which is what modding will do.
Speaking of modding, I know you saw this tweet because I think you liked it. It was a tweet from Joe Forham. I've got him up here. He's a podcaster, but he tweeted the other day, and I shared it, and a lot of people shared it, about modding in games, and it was specifically The Witcher, how someone had put in extra story bits in The Witcher and redone the voice acting and stuff like that. And his take on it was, modding has gone too far. You're now ruining games for the developers. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's not true, because if you look at, for example, modders who did a huge amount of work on Battlefield 2 for the mod Desert Combat, they ended up becoming Battlefield 3 developers.
Whole Fast Nations of War, similar.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. The point is that I just think of it as a large canvas, and all the modders are doing is just touching up the finer detail, adding to, so you've got a great big huge vista or thing on your canvas, and they're just touching up little tiny bits just to put a little bit of extra detail in the back of it. And it's not unfair to say that there have been some games where modders have fixed the flipping games where the mods haven't been able to. I mean, you just look at the problem that occurred recently with the loading times on Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yeah.
That actually got fixed by a modder.
They got it down to like a few seconds or something like that.
Yeah, and they gave him 10 grand to say thank you, And
I don't think that's enough at all. That's like one of the biggest problems.
Maybe not. But the point is the fact that it behooves you as a development team to make use of those people as a resource to either help you improve your game or to add extra bows or strings to the bow, so to speak, because at the end of it, as long as it's based on the base game, they will still need to buy it. And so there'll still be a revenue stream for your game for quite some time.
Well, there was taleworlds talking about how moddable Bannerlord would be. And I think this is with most games coming out now that really want to embrace mods, is you can mod it as much as you want, but there's things in place to stop people from making a new game from it. Like you physically can't take that and then sell it as a new game. So I don't think there are really any downsides to mods. It's like you say with GTA 5, that was free development. They did pay him, but they didn't have to. They could have just gone well, that's them now.
But then that also explains, that kind of mentality that you have with a lot of modders, where they see a problem and they want to fix it, and they're so doggedly determined to look into it so closely that they figure out the problem. And so eventually help you with respect to your game and, the game playing experience, which is a term I absolutely detest. But yeah, it's like, when every time you get an update, and it's like improving your experience. It makes me want to headbutt my monitor.
Especially if it's like tens of gigabytes and it takes ages to install. And it's like, well, there's no real content here. It's just a few patches and things like that.
Yeah, but saying that, to a certain degree, we are to blame because we are wanting to play games in 4K. And so therefore 4K resolution means bigger, bigger textures, all that kind of stuff. And so therefore game size, I mean, I'm coming from the generation where I played Elite on a single 520 floppy disk. You know, if anything, I wonder if, you know, with development, because the size of development projects grow so big, that has it made developers lazy to a certain degree, where, because, you know, back in the day, they didn't have so much space to work with. They had to find creative ways around it and try and making it as small as it possibly can be. Obviously, you know, graphics was less of an issue around those times, but I just wonder from a development point of view how it changes things, whether or not developers should have a longer cycle for the development of a game, because at the moment it's about 18 to 24 months.
Yeah. Well, you say like developers getting lazy, and like from an audio perspective, like back in the day, obviously, because there was hardly any space to put games on, the audio was something that literally just had to be chiptune stuff, not because out of a stylized choice, but because they could only make beeps of certain frequencies because they couldn't fit anything else on. And then you go fast forward to now with Call of Duty Warzone, which is over 100 gigabytes, and it comes out that the reason it's that size, a lot of the reason is because they just didn't bother to compress any audio. So it's just full FLAC files and WAV files that are taking up tens of gigabytes.
But then you're saying now also, I mean, in the sort of earlier days, when you, with some of the earlier games that ran on PC, you would have the game on PC and then you'd have audio files like an audio CD on the game, and it would play the music directly off the audio CD. Some of the games that I played just had, you never had to worry about things like copyright, which is one of the things that has changed a lot. I mean, I remember playing one of my favorite games back in era 1999, 2000, maybe a little bit later than that, had probably the best game name ever in the history of the universe, but also was intensely entertaining and fun. And it was called Wargasm.
What was that about?
It was basically, it was tanks and it was helicopters, and it was basically just like full-on combat like you'd have in Battlefield 3, that kind of stuff with a tank. But around the time, it's done by a company called DID. And it was fantastic. You had epic music from, you know, from the likes of Mozart and all the rest of it playing in the background while you're in the middle of a tank battle. It's probably the most epic thing you could ever possibly hear. And the thing that's also funny is that I played that game online and won a competition online and was sent a congratulatory T-shirt by the developers. And it just said on it, multiple Wargasm. My favorite ever T-shirt.
I feel like that wouldn't happen anymore with games.
No,
games have to be so corporate.
Inappropriate.
Yeah, and they have to go to a specific guideline. And that was something that I wanted to talk to you about as someone that really grew up with games and has played games since the early stuff as well. What are your thoughts on the way that the gaming industry has changed from this? Well, as you mentioned, it was just all about fun and passion, and now it's come to the microtransaction everywhere, trying to stop modders from doing things, putting stuff behind paywalls.
To a certain degree, it's become more about control. Control about what the experience the player has, what they can do to change that experience, and things related to that. I think also, especially with YouTube, it's changed how they do music in games as well, because at the moment, still, there is an issue relating to music, because the license to use music in a game is a different license to actually then broadcast it over YouTube. So it means that you can experience that game for yourself with the music that is copyrighted. But if you try and play that game and record it on YouTube, you'll get a copyright strike for it. And so as a result, what happens is music that gets used in games can also then have, once the period of the game being supported has passed, they sell those licenses on to other persons who then basically come down like a lead brick on somebody who has used that copyrighted music in a game that is dated like 2004, which has happened to me, by the way. And it's it's a difficult situation because now I think a lot of developers should probably look to not only how their game is going to be played, but also how their game is going to be covered with respect to on social media, YouTube, all that kind of stuff, and maybe make certain decisions based on that they can, use non-copyrighted music, or they could own the license for that, and so therefore won't sell it on to anyone else, that kind of thing. I think also with the increase in resources needed to run a lot of the modern games, it means that the PCs considerably have got faster and faster and faster and more memory hoggish, so to speak, in order to run some of these games, to the point where part of the appeal, I think, of Mount and Blade was it ran on, I think, DirectX 7.
Yep.
And so it was still chunky, but the point is so many people could play it on their potato laptops and other stuff.
I think that's how everyone started in that game.
and so as a result of that, because everybody doesn't have the highest possible spec PC, it means some of these games are unreachable to certain players, and so far, and that means it artificially limits their player base.
Definitely. I think especially with YouTube and gaming, there's always been this weird fight between. I think it's sort of come to a middle ground now with game developers and YouTube, and most of them are accepting it. But there's still, like, Nintendo still having a go at YouTubers, because I don't know what the effects of that would be on their sales. Because obviously Nintendo is massive. But I think there's a whole market they're missing out without letting people play on YouTube.
That's the thing, because I think to play stuff on Nintendo, you have to be partnered with Nintendo, and they take 50 or 70% of your money in regard to that. And the thing is that the goodwill that a developer has with their gamers takes a long time to build up and can be lost in days.
Yep.
And that I suppose it's difficult it's easy for us to say, because we're gamers, it's not a business to us. Well, not always, unless you're a full-time YouTuber and doing stuff like that, then it is a business, but it's slightly different. But it's more in the case of the goodwill of your subscribers, your viewer base, all that kind of stuff. You don't really want to take the chance to abuse it, because it might just up and say, screw you. And that they're in danger of screwing over their own people, to the point where people will just say, you know what, it's not worth the effort anymore. And then all of a sudden, all the eyes that have been on their products up to that point will just disappear. And so all of a sudden they say, yeah, our sales have dropped, and this has dropped, and that has dropped. It's like, well, where's all that money gone? Well, it's because you weren't allowing people to shine a light onto your game without taking all the money associated to it. I wonder how much of it is actually business and how much of it is just plain pure greed.
Yeah. As a person on your channel that plays a bit of Total War, what sort of, I don't know if you've really been in with the community and the reaction for that, but talking about, game companies that have this massive loyal fan base, and then they make a bad game or they make a bad decision and it starts to drop off. From the outside, what do you think of, like, the reaction to, I wouldn't say decline of the Total War franchise, but the more negative reactions to the more recent games?
I think, I wouldn't disagree with that, because I haven't thought that fondly of them myself. The way that, later games have started using sort of hero characters, which kind of takes away for me part of the appeal for me for Total War was you are the hero. You are basically taking command of the armies.
Sort of thing, yeah.
You are the commander. And then by having heroes, you kind of take away some of that level of control. That's some kind of level of intimacy that you have with the battles that are going on. That these are your troops. They're not just, oh, right, my general screwed up or something along those lines. It's like, no, it's all on you. It's all on your strategy. It's all on how you decide to use your people, where you go to tell, guys, I want you to use arrows at this time from this location, all that kind of stuff. But with heroes, I feel sometimes tends to dilute that. to the point where people are losing that sense of ownership that they have on the game that they're playing.
Yeah. What do you think in terms of the future of Total War? What do you think they can, where do you think they should go with that then? To change,
get away from heroes.
Is it just heroes for you? Because the last episode that obviously hasn't been put up yet was with the Prince of Macedon. I don't know if you know him, but he's done a lot of
I've spoken
Total War stuff, and his was a bit of a similar reaction. It didn't feel, it didn't quite describe it as the heroes, but it's like it didn't feel the same. Like the way you played, the mechanics, it didn't feel like you were a part of those battles. It felt more like you were spectating them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very fair argument. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, some of the battles I've had on the Total War series have been absolutely immense, hysterically so, you know, with just ridiculous things occurring. My personal favorite is still Napoleon Total War because of the era, obviously. Although, I mean, even though it was a complete disaster when it came out, Rome 2, I'm still playing now.
I love Rome 2. I absolutely
I really enjoy that. I mean, to the point where the series that I stopped doing because people weren't watching it on the channel, I've played that campaign now through to completion about 3 times.
Yeah, so far in Rome 2, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just fun. Plus, also now with the politics side of it in there, that you know you got to keep them sweet because otherwise they're just going to turn their back on you and start, you know, deserting. So, but I've always taken the opinion you can't desert if you're dead.
So, as you said, Napoleon is your favorite Total War. I've never really got into the musket ones. How would, as a more ancient warfare orientated fan of Total War, how does the Napoleonic Wars really fare up? What does it do differently?
I think the atmosphere of it, the atmosphere of the battles, the carnage that is generated as a result of these battles. I mean, I've had a battle with sort of like 6,000 or 7,000 people total, and you know, like they've lost 4,500 people in that battle, and it shows on the battlefield. So that level of carnage is actually quite intense, and also, you know, the sort of, there are certain aspects. I keep pressing tab to show the, you know, the massive menu, and it's not there on Napoleon Total War. So there are certain mechanics that have come from the likes of Rome 2 and other games that I would like to see in a new Napoleon Total War. But I think it's just predominantly the era I like as well.
Yeah.
It's the early period of muskets, so they're not like massively accurate. You got to get within 100 feet to kind of do any damage, but you know, the cadence drumming and the marching all together as this big line, it's quite intense to play. The battles can, you know, turn on a simple issue of where you place your artillery, how you move your cavalry, the kind of things that you can do in the game are the sort of the classic strategies, like, you know, the diversionary force, and then the diversionary force is actually the attack force, and all that kind of stuff. Those are kind of things that I learned from playing Command and Conquer, the original one, believe it or not.
So, if you had to choose Total War's next game, would it be a Napoleon 2 for you?
Without question.
What would you want them to add into it?
No heroes.
I think that's been a given.
Yeah. The entire map, so the entire world to play, rather than just Europe. And obviously, you know, a lot of the functions that have been put into Rome 2, you know, like being able to move the entire army forward by using the arrow keys, all that kind of stuff, moving, sort of fine details of moving and controlling. That's the kind of stuff. It's just obviously being able to play that game, it would look amazing, because I mean, even the existing Napoleon Total War still looks amazing. If you play it with Darth Mod, you can have up to 400-man armies or 400-man regiments, I think, something like that. And it's just, it gets insanely immense. I mean, some of the battles I've had on there have been incredible. And there's obviously the early days of artillery. So, you know, it's a lot in there that would make, I would think, for a good campaign. And obviously you've got such an era from sort of 1815 and all that kind of stuff, or well, up to 1815. that era of the Napoleonic Wars and all the battles that have occurred in between. But then that's not to say that you couldn't include, if you do a total domination, that you've then got to go and fight a battle for India. And, you know, I suppose it would be, in cases, merging Empire Total War and Napoleon Total War together.
Yeah, I think if they were going to do a sequel, it'd have to be, I don't know if they'd ever go Napoleon 2 and Empire 2. It'd either be one or the other, or they'd probably go for some sort of merger. Are you by any chance a Sharp fan?
God, yes.
I love that TV show. I think it is some of the best, just like fun entertainment. There's nothing serious about it. It's just like campy, fun sort of thing where it's one of the things that you can just sit down and turn on an episode and you're always going to have an entertaining time.
Yeah, there's also some quite somber moments in there that make you realise the impact the war has on people and things of that nature. And there's moments like that I tend to take away from it. But yeah, Sharp, fantastic. I haven't read any of the books, but the series are just absolutely phenomenally good. Sean Bean, who doesn't? I mean, it's finally great to see a TV series in which Sean Bean doesn't bloody die every year.
I would really love for them to do a sequel. Or, well, it's the problem is like I'd love to see more of it, but would it be a disaster if they came back to that thing?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, where would Sharp be? He was a colonel by the time saw the last series. I mean,
and Sean Bean's getting old. He probably wouldn't be able to do all the things he could then.
Yeah, exactly. So they'd have to probably do it from a general point of view, but then that would then bring in a certain level of more of the strategy rather than the individual soldier fighting. So it could be a potential be interesting in that regard, because then you'll see it on how the generals fight, and then you'll see it from the general's point of view, see how his decisions would change, where he just say, well, you know, I don't care about the men. We have to take this point, because if we can't take this, then we can't do this, and we can't do this, and then the whole thing falls apart.
I think definitely for, as you mentioned, the more somber moments and like actual good, real emotive storytelling, I think it definitely could be a really unique angle for having it like that. Because, I mean, in the Sharp series, the decisions he made were, I mean, they were decisions that would win or lose battles, but on a general scale, if you are in the seat that, you know, Napoleon was on, or in that sort of high level, those decisions are the ones that could really have impacts on the stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you seen the film Waterloo?
Of course I have seen Waterloo. It's a brilliant movie.
And that shot of the cavalry charge where it pulls back with a helicopter, and there is just thousands and thousands of troops in squares,
and it's not CGI,
and it's not CGI, and it's like, oh my god, can you imagine being a helicopter pilot flying and a cameraman watching that? I mean, just jaw dropping considering the period. I mean, you know, it's just a staggeringly good film, and all the cavalrymen doing all their stunts and things like that, you know, because they train the horses. If you pull on the right rein or the left rein, they literally lie down, and that's how the stunts. You see the stunts horses, yeah. So
I've always wondered how they do dying horses without injuring them.
Have you ever seen the film Blazing Saddles?
I haven't, no.
Okay, you need to see that.
Okay,
because in that is a moment with a horse. You can see them how they make the horse lie down, but beware, it's not one to watch with the family.
Okay, I see.
Just so you know,
it's just something about, especially Waterloo, and I'm sure you're aware of the YouTube channel History Buffs, who's done videos on Waterloo and stuff. It's something about, especially watching his video and all the behind the scenes and the background of everything, seeing a film where what you're seeing is what's happening. You're not, because I mean, Avengers Endgame, one of the most brilliant moments, I think, on TV. I mean, in cinema. We'll get onto that in a bit.
Everyone's watched it by now, I think.
But yeah, one of the most brilliant moments, and it's great. But afterwards, you know that they're doing it on a green screen, or they're doing it in a volume, or something like that. But seeing that charge in Waterloo, and what you can see through the lens is what those people are seeing through their eyes. There's something a bit different about that.
Yes. Well, the thing is, if anything, I think it's when they do stuff like that on blue screen, you're closer to it. It's more personal. It's more intense, but it lacks scale. And so when you actually see it being done with all those horses and the time period, you realize, holy shit, that's an awful lot of people who had to do that. And, you know, you think about who got hurt doing that. Was anybody hurt? Was any horses injured as a result of doing that? Because think about how many times they had to rehearse it as well.
Well, exactly. It was filmed with the Red Army, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But just think about things like that, because blue screen is fantastic to give you the ability to, you know, visualize worlds you couldn't necessarily have in the film via these CGI set extensions, all that kind of stuff. But it also takes away from some of the feeling of immenseness that came with the films of that era and just films of that type. I mean, you know, you start to look back before that with Cleopatra and stuff like that. It's a different way of filmmaking in this. I mean, I have a massive interest in filmmaking anyway. But filmmaking has to evolve over the course of time, make use of new technologies. I mean, just look at what they did with Star Wars, you know, all the blue screen,
as well,
motion control stuff. All the other stuff as well. I mean, you know, like for example, the first trilogy, the 1, 2, 3 trilogy. That was the first ones that were filmed on predominantly digital cameras.
Yeah.
And so this is the kind of thing where the film industry has to keep up to date, and it enables a lot of things to occur, but also the problem that some filmmakers have fallen into is overcrowding the screen, giving you sensory overload with too much stuff that you can't possibly see. And so therefore it gets lost in the sheer, almost like in the middle of a windstorm, you know, you can't see everything that's going on around you. You just have to focus on one thing.
I think we are somewhat, in a weird way, with the advancement of technology, how it's got better and better, almost going back to what we were speaking about with everything you see through the lens is actually happening with the Mandalorian and their volumetric cube sort of thing, where they project onto an LED around them and they're actually like, they can see, the actors can see it. And it's almost like going back to what it was before, but just using technology to do that. And game engines being used, Unreal 4 being, or Unreal 5 being used with VR headsets to put cameras and things.
But then think of it, I mean, you, like you're saying, going from blue screen, green screen to that means that also from the point of view of an actor, you know what you're looking at in the background. You know, you can see, you don't have to say, oh my God, what a wonderful vista. And it's just a blue screen. You got no bloody idea. Whereas if you can actually see it, so therefore it makes the acting easier to give over the impression of scale and impact and things of that nature. So I think primarily the part of the reason they did it that way is to be able to make the series for a lot less money than it would have cost to do it any other way. And that's, I think, is part of the big problem that's affecting games and also the film industry, is the amount it's costing to make these things now. Because the amount of work that's got to go into it, that it's getting to the point where it's difficult to ensure that you can make a film or a game to the required standard and it not cost you $100 to $200 million.
Yeah, and especially with streaming services now, I think Netflix revealed that in 2020 they spent 17 billion on original content. And like people will be like, oh, just spend less, but they can't, because their original content's the only thing that's bringing people back, because every day they're losing licenses for Disney shows, for Sony's about to bring out a new streaming service, for HBO stuff and things like that. So they need to make original stuff, but it's so expensive.
Yeah, but also that's the other problem, is the fact that all of a sudden they're jumping on this bandwagon of saying, well, okay, right, well, these people are making money from the streaming service, and all of a sudden we want all that money. So it becomes about greed again.
Yep.
So in other words, it's like, oh, if I want to watch this series, I've got to be on Disney Plus. But if I want to watch this series, I've got to be on HBO Max. If I want to watch this series, then I need to be on CBS Max or whatever. And you end up being signed on to about 15 different platforms just so you can watch the films that you want to watch.
Yeah.
Whereas on channels, watching, back in the days of 4 channels, if you wanted to see something, you had to be there to watch it.
Yeah. What's sort of your thoughts on the balance between that? Because you have that issue, and I have intentionally fallen victim to it. I have pretty much every streaming service just because I love watching movies, but it is an issue, and it will carry on being an issue and keep growing. Like I said, Sony's about to bring one out as well, which, I mean, I was talking to the guy in John Lewis because I was looking at TVs, and he said it's going to be like 15 quid a month on top of everything else, and like just not a. And when HBO Max comes to the UK, that's another one as well. What do you think the balance is between having those streaming services but keeping the quality of content? Because we've definitely, without a doubt, streaming services has bought better TV and better movies. It's brought the budget up. You wouldn't have things like The Mandalorian, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, even though that was originally on TV. That's had its renaissance on Netflix, and then Better Call Saul's come because of that. What do you think the balance between is having so many streaming services to pay for, but also they give us better stuff? So
yeah, the trouble is eventually the market is going to rebel against it.
Do you think so?
Yes, because the thing is, everybody wants new content, but my wallet only goes so far.
Yeah, there's going to have to be a way that people can afford it.
Everything is finite. Yeah. Everything is finite. It's possible that off the back of this, only one big customer, one big conglomerate will survive as a result of this, in the same way that you see multiple movie studios now gone by the wayside that don't exist anymore because they couldn't keep up with either the technology or the demand. The problem with streaming services is demand.
Yep.
But also there's the other aspect of, I mean, I look behind me, sort of just over there somewhere.
Just laughing because there's no way I could see that at all. That was way off the picture.
Over there. Trust me. I'll send you a picture later.
I trust you.
Hang on. That I have plenty of DVDs, Blu-rays, all that kind of stuff.
Any HD DVDs?
Oh yes, I've got those.
You've got HD DVDs.
I've got a 4K Blu-ray player.
Oh, I don't mean 4K Blu-ray, because obviously 4K Blu-ray is amazing, but don't you remember the HD DVD that was going up against the original Blu-ray?
Yes, I do. No, I don't have any of those. I went blue.
That is a shame, because they are relics.
Yes, they are
beautiful pieces of technology.
So am I. I'm a relic as well. But the point is that I own those, and I can watch them anytime I want. With a streaming service, it's only available as long as they make it available to you.
Even buying it, I've realized, because I buy a lot of films on Amazon if it's not on a streaming service. As if Amazon decide one day that I don't own that, then I don't own it, even though I paid for it.
Exactly. I don't have that problem with DVDs, and so even films that come out recently. Do you still
regularly buy physical content then?
Yes. I mean, I've got like Iron Man 1, 2, and 3, Thor, all the rest of it, all the Star Wars stuff. Yeah, basically.
This is what I love about, I think the 4K Blu-ray is the last savior of physical media for watching stuff, because, I mean, the 4K Blu-ray is better than any sort of 4K stream thing that we have so far. And, I mean, yes, it's more expensive, but it's the only physical media that I would say, in terms of your actual viewing quality, obviously, there's things like you say, you actually own it. But in terms of visual quality, the 4K Blu-ray is the only bit of physical media, I think, left that is better than a streaming service and actually worth getting over a streaming service.
Not only that, but on 90% of the streaming services, you don't get the extras that come with it. The commentaries, the making of, all that kind of stuff, which is the kind of stuff I really love. I mean, just think, you watch a film, you watch one of the Lord of the Rings. How much are you missing by not watching the appendices?
Well, I mean, like the amount of content that's been put online from behind the scenes and stuff for Lord of the Rings is immense. And as soon as I move flat, I have got in my basket on Amazon 4K Blu-ray Lord of the Rings that I will buy then.
Yeah, I'm tempted. I'm very tempted to do that myself, But then, it's just, the thing is, I don't want a streaming service to be able to dictate to me when I can watch something and when I can't.
Yeah, because they're always taking things on and off and stuff like that.
Yeah, they'll always. But then you also find films that you haven't seen for ages, which is wonderful, you know, and it gets you. It also allows you, especially with Amazon Prime, you get all sorts of films included, and then you get to watch films you may never have considered before, and so watch a film that becomes a pleasant surprise to you.
Yeah.
And so, you know, increases the vista of which you watch films and enjoy them, and, you know, try films that you wouldn't necessarily normally watch. I mean, I still think that Downfall is probably one of the best German films ever made. Absolutely incredible.
I mean, it was a bit of, I think I seen the actor in an interview was like, I mean, it's a shame how much of a meme it became, but I'm still happy with my performance.
But holy crap, what a performance and half that was. Bruno Ganz, his name was. And that was just phenomenally good. Absolutely phenomenally good. But I'm the kind of stuff, I don't want to watch it without listening to the native language. Because for me, that's part of it. Obviously, for the streaming platforms have created so much in content. They have really started to push Hollywood to do better, to be better, I think. You know, Hollywood was never felt under pressure from TV that it has now, because obviously with a TV series, you can, over a course of, you know, however many episodes you're going to do, you can dive deep into the characters, deep into the storyline that you could never normally do in a film and have it satisfying, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that we're going to find that there's going to be one winner out of all the streaming services. And I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I think some will start to drop off, but it depends if there's going to be one or two at the top. Who do you think out of the streaming service do you think can survive this sort of battle? Because you've got the ones like the only American ones like Peacock and CBS All Access that I think is a given they're going to go eventually.
Yeah. I think Netflix was the first, and I think it might be the last. Part of the problem that Netflix has also had is with respect to the comms companies. So, for example, in the case of Netflix, they had to fork over something like, I think, 1 or 2% of their income as a result of using a particular comms company to stream their software over or stream the videos over. And so because they were noticing such a massive spike on the usages of their lines, they wanted to cut in to the amount of money that Netflix was making. And so basically they blackmailed Netflix to do that by essentially throttling their bandwidth to Netflix across their lines until Netflix agreed to do it. So you've got that kind of very self-centered attitude to it with respect to the streaming platforms. But I think, at least unlike, you know, Blockbuster Video, Netflix, I think, will continue to keep up with the trends. And they were a trendsetter. And as long as they continue to push that, I think they stand the best chance, because they have become a one place fits all.
I kind of agree, but what do you think about their backing, though? Because that's all they do. If the stream starts to die, they're gone. But Disney's Disney.
Yeah, true. But the thing is, it's the way I see it, it's okay, streaming's gone, but until such times as we blow up the earth and we've got no internet, somebody's always going to be able to want to watch a film in some way or another.
Yeah.
So I don't think streaming will ever go. It might change how it's streamed to the people. So whether or not it will be streamed into some kind of, you know, glasses system that then projects it directly in front of your face rather than into a television screen and stuff like that. I just think the ways in which the content will be presented will differ, but the content itself won't massively differ over the course of time. I think people are always going to want original stories, stuff that isn't Hollywood, stuff that isn't afraid to, you know, punch you in the face to get your attention, isn't afraid to go cover dark subjects that nobody would normally cover, because the the standard channels would, for fear of losing their audience, will shy away from it.
BBC.
yeah, BBC, ITV channels. Channel 4 tended to do some of the more questionable stuff,
Wow,
but the point is,
and now that's gone.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is the fact that unless you have people who are willing to do that stuff that kind of provides a bit more of an edge, a bit kind of non-standard storytelling. I mean, you look at non-standard storytelling, one of my favorite series of all time is Babylon 5. That was a 5-year story arc. Something that's written over the course of time with a general idea on what's going on, everything that's occurring in that. And those things have become more than just standard episodal. So you've seen, it's a story over the course of an entire series. I think I remember the first series that kind of did that in a serious way was called Murder One, where it basically covered a murder and then the build up to the trial and the eventual trial and the result at the end of the whole series. And I remember that well, actually. It was Stephen Bucko, I think his name was, who did things like NCIS and things of that nature. So, yeah, I don't think that the desire for content will always exist. It's how that content is presented that will change.
Yeah. And I mean, with sort of everyone splitting off and doing their own thing, there's a very high chance we're going to go back in a full circle to saying, if you get Disney Plus, you get Netflix now as well.
Yeah.
If you get Amazon, you also get Netflix and Disney Plus with it as well. I mean, it's unlikely, I think, at this point in time because everyone's trying to fight against each other. But if people, like you say, do stop saying, yeah, I'm not going to do that anymore, I'm not spending more money on that, it could be a possibility. It just goes back to package bundle deals and things like that.
Part of that also is the fact that with the cost of living continuing to rise, but wages are not rising accordingly in the same sort of thing, it means that your money over the course of time is worth less and less. So you become more focused on what you actually spend it on and remove any extraneous things that you don't actually need. So it means that the market will automatically peel back to a single few people in the market.
Yeah. You seem, I don't know, I've always spoken to you about games and things. I've never really mentioned movies with you all that much. But where did do you have much experience within the film industry, or is it just sort of a side passion sort of thing?
It's a side passion mostly. Oh God, choking. Sorry about that, I had to cough. I've always been into films big. I'm massively into animation, even as a kid. Mm-hmm. I loved all the Disney animation, all those films, all that kind of stuff. I have a lot of good memories of that. I have a huge interest in film, special effects, all that kind of thing. Loved all the Star Wars, how they made all that kind of stuff. I'm learning a 3D animation program, Maya, which is one of the things that they made Transformers with.
I see.
So yeah, very.
Are you on the next Transformers then? Is that going to be you doing
No, I wouldn't want to do Transformers. I'll be more into the Pixar type of character animation. Definitely. That's the kind of stuff that I love and appreciate, and just understand how difficult it is to give that feeling of normalcy and just smoothness to a characters. I mean, one of the most difficult things to do in CGI at the moment is the human mouth.
Yep.
It's really, really difficult.
We see that in games as well, which is why there has never been a convincing kiss ever in game history, because it's just smashing together.
Yeah, exactly. But then even if it is, it's because they basically motion captured.
Yeah.
But then motion capture, the reason they're having to do that is because there's a certain fluidity of movement that human beings have that is very, very hard to animate and look convincing, because there's all sorts of little sort of twists. And I mean, you just sit and watch somebody and see how much of their body moves just as a course of just sitting there. Yeah, even reading a book, you're thinking about, do the eyes move? Do the ears move? Does the nose twitch every now and then? How is the arm moving? In what way is it moving? Which, it's just stuff like that that really interests me and fascinates me with respect to animation. I mean, if I could do that for a living, I wouldn't think about it twice. I've got several several, oh God, so many ideas of animation type short films that I would love to do that are just sitting in the back of my head that I don't have the means to do it or the know-how to do it.
Have you ever thought about using your YouTube to go in conjunction with that sort of thing to make animated stuff on YouTube?
Yes.
Is that a route that you're planning on going down, or is that just sort of I hope to do it someday, but I need to get around to
do it, but I would love to be able to do it. I mean, you just have to look at the popularity of Lucas the Spider.
Yep. Wow, yeah. It's mad.
Absolutely mad. And it's such beautiful animation and just such little sort of touches that just not give humanity, but give a sense of realness to it, you know? Yeah. I mean, there are things I've got a fantastic book that my parents gave me when I was 10. It was called Disney Animation: The Illusion of Life. And it's going through all the animation that they did in the 30s and the 40s and all that about how they gave the illusion of life to drawing pencils and things, and how they would give that impression of reality of life to just drawing cartoons, which could then also be taken into animation relating to computers. One of the advantages of animation relating to computers is because you can sort of put in inverse kinematics linking. You can link the body together so that it operates in the way that a human skeleton would, has limitations on it when you're doing the animation, so therefore assist you in making it seem more real. I mean, there's also the model making stuff, which they haven't done a lot of, but they did some basic model stuff. If you look on the making of the Mandalorian, that the guy did in his shed with a classic black screen and then a motion control camera, which is exactly what they did with the original Star Wars.
Yeah.
Those motion control where it's the model that's moving towards the camera. Sorry, the camera that's moving towards the model to give the impression of flight going past. I mean, you just look at those pictures when you saw the X-Wings crashing into the floor of the Death Star when they were doing their bombing runs and all that kind of stuff. That was recorded by guys sitting on the back of a pickup truck as he drove past explosions that were sitting on a table in the middle of a bloody car park. The point is that, you can pull that kind of stuff together. And I love that kind of way that they assemble things. And I mean, I used to watch TV series about it. And, I'd love to get into that sort of animation. I mean, I still think one of the best space battles that I've ever seen in television is the space battle at the end of Deep Space Nine.
I have not seen. I've never been the biggest Star Trek fan, but
I love it.
Maybe I've always thought that one day I'll get around to watching it properly. But I'll keep that one in mind.
Well, yeah, like I said, you'll have to come and pay me a visit, and we'll sit down and watch them. I'll show you some of the best episodes.
Yes, I would love to actually start watching Star Trek for once.
The thing is, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, some of the ideals that they have in Star Trek are quite appealing. Like, for example, no existence of money. Just think about that on a basic concept. If not everybody was basically looking to get more money, what would you do with yourself?
Yeah,
you'd look to learn new things. You'd look to better yourself. You'd look to enjoy your life. If you didn't have to worry about being fed, having resources available to you, and more importantly, money.
But would a world be able to function when people just did what they wanted to do? That's
to a certain degree, but then that's how life and the world would change, depending, because as with everything, there are rules, there are laws. So that's the way that you would do it. You would put in laws to say you are not permitted to do this, or this is. It's in the same way that free speech in America, for example. You have the right to free speech, but you don't have the right to shout fire in a crowded theatre.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing is freedom of speech is one thing. Freedom to say whatever you want is a completely different thing, as is with some people are discovering. Freedom to speech does not mean freedom of consequence for what you say.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've only ever talked about games. I could talk about so many other things for so long. Like I said, day 43, we're still here.
Well, to be fair, if this one obviously you won't have said everything you want to say by the end of it, but I mean, and in the future, this I don't know, podcast show, I'm hoping to make one day become, once I've moved and I have an actual set, a real life thing, so we can actually like, I'm hoping to like get people in and have proper shows and stuff like that, and there'll be plenty more we can talk about, I'm sure. I mean, talking about sort of with the whole Star Trek thing and what would you do if money wasn't a thing, how have you managed to balance that with your YouTube channel? How has it been? You managed to balance passion but also doing stuff what people watch, because I find that to be an issue. Like, I would want to just upload Hell Let Loose videos, Men of War videos all day, but as like my last few Hell Let Loose videos, they get like 4,000-5,000 views. If I upload a Bannerlord video, it gets 100,000 views. And like, how have you managed to sort of balance that? Have you just sort of gone, fuck it, I'll just do whatever I want at this point? Or
yeah, pretty much. The thing is it's a kind of, I want to get more views, but also not at the expense of my mental health and the enjoying the games. You know, at the moment, YouTube is not a job for me. It's a hobby. I have a full-time job in IT, which keeps me very busy. But for me, YouTube is a sense of escapism. It's something that I enjoy. I want to keep enjoying it. If I have to do it as a job, then I'll do it with the same level of commitment that I would do my current job. But then it's a case of, you know, it's such a, part of the problem is it's such a, it's such an unstable base when you're talking about making money from YouTube.
And I think that has wide implications. I think a lot of people that watch YouTube don't understand, where, especially like when you're in the early stages or where you have a smaller channel where you're like, I really want to get into this, put all my heart into this and try and make something of this, but
I mean, can't afford to. Yeah,
the risk is too high, and then it has wide implications on mental health, because I mean, even at the relatively small channel size I have compared to the rest of YouTube, if a video flops or there's like 20% dislikes, that's me done for a few days. I'm just like, I just can't be bothered to do anything. And I'm like, I don't want to upload anymore. And then I'll always pick myself back up. But just, I've tried to push myself away from it. I've uninstalled the YouTube Studio app. I find that is the worst possible thing. When it has, this video has performed 10 out of your last 10. I was like, well, what was the point of all that effort? I've uninstalled that, got that away.
Yeah, exactly. Why not kick me while I'm down? Yeah.
And also when you get number one, there's little fireworks and stuff like that when you do well, and that just like, it feels good at the time, but in the long term, it's just screwing you over mentally.
I find it patronizing, to be honest. It's like, yay, you've done better than you did last time. It's like, great, okay, whatever. You know, I mean, for me, I still play games offline. There are still games that I play because also there's this certain aspect where you want to play, but you want to enjoy it. You don't want to have to look at it as to how can I make this game that I am playing entertaining to others and present it to them in an entertaining way. I just want to have a mindless mass murder, you know, whatever it is I want to do. I want to relax with a quiet session of mass genocide, and then just, which is when you think about it, what most of the games that we play is.
Pretty much.
And not have to worry about how do I make it entertaining to people, because what a lot of people also don't understand is that, I mean, I'm kind of lucky with my commentaries are done live. So it's literally, I just copy one video onto the back of what, because I pause it in between rounds.
Okay.
So I then basically then cut them all together. And there you go, you have it. So it's one big broadcast that's like 45 minutes long, but I recorded it all live. I, you know, just pause, record at the end of each round. Whereas a lot of the videos that you do and a lot of videos that a lot of other big YouTubers do, there's so much more editing that's involved. I mean, a perfect example is there's a video on my channel that is 2.5 minutes long. And it took me 6 hours to edit it to a point where I was happy with it.
Yeah. And then if it flops, you're like, well, what was the point of that?
Exactly. And the thing, to a certain degree, it frustrates me because it kind of encourages laziness with respect to production of content.
I couldn't agree. That is literally why I do the videos that I do now. And it was during the summer, I was, like I mentioned before, I used to script everything. I'd have an idea, script it all out, then I'd record the voiceover, then I'd write notes of what footage I needed, then I'd edit it, and it would take like a few days of like just pure work. There were like very little breaks, and sometimes it'd get like no views compared to like another video that took me a few minutes, and it would be so demoralizing. So I was like, in January, I was like, right, I need to find a way of getting around this. So now my way of getting around it is putting, honestly, less effort into the videos. I'd still try and find that balance between quality and quantity, but it'll be like, I'll find a game, but I'll pick a game that I know. I'll pick a game that I can talk about for 8 to 10 minutes ish, or 50 minutes, and edit it down. But it takes away from that feeling of a project. I feel like I'll sit down, I'll talk about something, whether it's a new update or something, I'll edit it together, it'll take me a few hours, but because it doesn't take as long, I'll put it up. If it doesn't do so well, mentally I'm much better about it, and I think it's been the best way for me to do it, like for my own sanity. But I don't feel like I'm working on a project like I did before. But honestly, I couldn't get over the fact that I'd be working on these things for 10, 15 hours of video, and then they just flop, and I'll be like, it would just be so demoralizing. How have you managed to get around that? Because I've noticed you've started doing a bit more scripted and more almost video essay stuff.
Yeah, I like the scripted, but also because of a lot of what my channel has been on off the cuff commentaries. I try not to do too much scripted. I'm still doing commentaries on a regular basis. I'll always, commentate on a video. If anything, what changed with the video commentaries is when I started making the historical events a lot more edited. Yeah. So, for example, tell you the story of what's going to happen in the round, sort of pause it so you can understand what was going on, all that kind of stuff. There's so much more that I'd love to do with that. I mean, that's why I keep asking the people on Totally Accurate Battle Simulator to please put in a Napoleonic Wars thing, because then what I'd do is I was thinking about doing like, here's the battle, and we're going to do a quick recreation of what just happened in Totally Accurate Battle, and it'll just be a completely stupid thing. But that kind of thing I would like to do. I mean, I'd love to do more sort of serious films, but I just don't have the resources. I don't have the moment. The thing that's really killing me is I'm suffering pretty badly from constant tiredness. Yeah. Like constantly, just absolutely knackered. So like I finished work at 5:30 yesterday. By 5:35 I was in bed. And it's been like this for 6 months, maybe 12 months. And I haven't managed to find a solution to it yet. And that.
Do you feel like that's more like a physical tiredness or more like a mental tiredness sort of thing?
I do feel like it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the fact that I'm working from home all the time and I don't get any sort of change of tune with respect to going out. And, it's nice to just go out in the car, just for a drive, let your hair down. Well, obviously, figuratively speaking, rather than literally, but you know what I'm saying. But the point is the fact that it's the change of tune, the change of aspect of that kind of thing that's missing with the situation with the lockdown. But I mean, another thing is also that it's quite amazing when I've spoken to people when they've tried to do a commentary off the top of their head and they fail. They just can't do it. And they don't realize how difficult it is. But then the thing that's kind of more annoying to them is the fact that I make it look so easy. And they've said that you make it look so easy to talk about absolutely sod all for 15 seconds while we're waiting for the game to get set up. Yeah. It's just stuff that you have off the top of your head.
I find editing saves my ass so much, which is why like my videos are so fast paced, like with the audio commentary, because I cut out all the stops stuff. Like my audio recordings are perhaps 15 minutes and I'll edit it down with all the stutters and everything out, and it's about 8 minutes, 9 minutes.
Yeah, one thing I like doing in my historical vids was basically when I was doing it, and I would actually then put in the outtakes of me trying to record the voiceover.
I don't have the balls for
that. Because to me, I'm just like, yeah, I screw up just as much as everyone else. Everybody else. It's just like, this is the thing that I had with Facebook. and to a degree Twitter, but also with Instagram, is this fake impression that people give off of their perfect lives, when in fact they're
especially
just as
like
screwed up
vlogging and things like that.
Oh god, yes. I mean, we'll swear and blind like a Scottish world, all these pubes on fire. Everybody does that, but the thing is that it's edited away so you don't see a large majority of that. But I also find sometimes editing to be a very frustrating experience, because I know what I would like to be able to do, but I either lack the skills or the footage to shoot it, to get the information, get the stuff I want, to be able to shoot it how I want to shoot it.
I think what a lot of people don't understand when going into YouTube, that the most valuable resource is time. And if like there's people that spend months on videos that are incredibly high quality, and that works for some channels, but if that video doesn't do well and that's their job, then they can't pay the rent that month or something like that. And I think time is one of the most valuable things on YouTube. Like you say, if you want to do something, but you either don't have the time to do it or you just can't, if like trying to get a video up at a certain time or something like that. What would you say sort of in terms of the way that you make videos? Are you planning on changing anything in the future? What would you say the future for your channel is?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to do more sort of commentary videos. One thing I'd love to be able to do is to do a series basically about the films from my childhood, the films that I have the most fondest memories of, and talk about those films and why I like them so much and why they appeal to me. I mean, it's like my favorite film of all time is Raiders of the Lost Ark, so much so that I have a copy of it on my phone that I like to watch.
Have you watched it much on your phone?
Oh, God, yes.
Is that a great viewing experience?
Oh, I love that film so much, because there are things in there that interest me. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a stuntman.
Thought you were about to say you wanted to be a Nazi then, and that was
no. I wanted to wear a fedora, but no, I wanted to be a stuntman, and I loved it. I was all that kind of stuff. Like, for example, going under the truck. That was done originally by a I can't remember what nationality he was. He might have been Hawaiian, but a guy called Yakima Canutt, who is a legend in the stunt series. Yeah. And to the point where he was riding, he would literally jump along the bars that the horses were riding on, then like got shot by John Wayne. He fell down in between the horses, holding onto the bar as all these horses are galloping next to him, then lets go of the bar and goes underneath.
I think I've seen that. Yeah,
that's from John Wayne's John Ford's or John Wayne's Stagecoach, and that's a famous stuntman. Another stuntman, for example, Dar Robinson, did an amazing fall off the top of the CN Tower. Like 1,000 feet. Absolutely.
You would almost call these stuntmen that were in like the 60s, 70s sort of time, even earlier. Well, especially around the times of like early films, silent films, where you couldn't have audio that was exciting. It had to be the visual, so you had to do stunts like this. They would I would call them more daredevils than stuntmen for most of it.
Well, even the actors did it themselves. Charlie Chaplin, for example, another one who did it themselves. I was that famous one of
on the clock tower.
Harold Lloyd.
Yeah,
I used to watch Harold Lloyd all the time as a kid. Loved it. Those kind of things is where all you see is what's in front of the camera. You don't see what's underneath it. Yeah. But then you have things like, for example, where they put miniatures in front of the camera, so it looks like it's a tall building. When in fact it's not, it's just under a platform, but the miniature hides it because of where they position it on the camera. Yeah. That kind of stuff is the kind of stuff that they did with things like the bigatures in Lord of the Rings. So that kind of, it's not technology, but techniques with respect to filmmaking have made their way through that entire series, all the way through to being used just in a different way to achieve the same look that's done and has been done since, the 50s and 60s and 30s. In fact, I think Harold Lloyd was. I mean, I used to watch black and white TV series for Flash Gordon and Zorro, which was my personal favorite, was Zorro. In fact, I actually do have memories of running around as a 7-year-old with a little mask on and a hat and a plastic sword as Zorro. I loved it. That kind of stuff. I mean, that kind of, I will say, if money was no object, I didn't have to worry about, paying for the future and all that. I would look to becoming a film director.
Yeah.
Because there are so many stories.
Would it be those old classic inspired movies that you'd go for then?
No, I'd love to do sci-fi.
Yeah.
I mean, I like sci-fi. I like sort of historical type stuff. For me, showing the things like, for example, I would want to do Napoleonic Wars, but done in such a way of the first 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah. I think that's something that's definitely gone amiss. I would say in terms of like historical epics, they've sort of, I mean, the early 2000s, there was so many of them, Troy, Alexander, 300, whatever. And I feel like it's really, I don't know what it is. Maybe it is the big budget sort of with people, but surely it'd just be replaced with CGI now. But no one really seems to want to go back to those historical epics. You get some every now and then, but it's not really the same.
I think the difference also is 300 was really predominantly shot on blue screen.
Yeah.
A few rocks here and there and stuff like that. And most of it was done in CGI. And, a few elephants and set extensions and things of that nature. But the thing is, if the canvas you're painting on is broad enough, then you can do anything, really. I mean, I would love to do a film about the battle to sink the Bismarck. I'd love to do a film about that. Various other films where, I love films with twists in them. Have you seen a film called No Way Out?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay, look for it. It's starring Kevin Costner.
Okay.
One of my favorite films. For you to watch that with your family and friends, it is family and friendly, sort of. But it's entertaining as hell. It is really, really good. It's like a political thriller type thing.
All right.
And that's like 1985, I think. But the thing that's kind of nice in a lot of ways is that as you get older, you get to show younger people like yourself, which is true. You are younger. Even though the lighting might be lying right now.
That's so rude.
is the fact that you get to show films that you remember from your youth and that are absolutely amazing that you may never have seen.
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably looking back at films like Goodfellas and then Mean Streets, a classic Robert De Niro film from the 70s. There was something about, if you've never seen it, for everyone out there, look for the car chase from The French Connection.
That is
probably regarded as one of the best in the business.
Yeah.
Just absolutely amazing stuff.
I remember, and I didn't really acknowledge it much back then, but when I was growing up, when I was 10, 11, 12 years old.
So last week then, yeah?
So last week, yeah. This was a good 2 months ago when I went to high school. But my parents, I remember every Sunday we'd watch an old World War II movie, and it would be Bridge over the River Kwai, A Bridge Too Far, that sort of thing, Where Eagles Dare and things like that. And I'm so glad looking back that I did watch them, because especially when I came to uni and you meet so many people from different backgrounds, and there's so this time period almost didn't exist in their mind, sort of, not just there's especially a sort of a lack of knowledge about history in World War II and how it happened, but also just after that, when these films were made, when they still had all the World War II tanks and vehicles and equipment and stuff, it was wait, is that actually a Spitfire? And I'm yep, that is a Spitfire and things like that.
It's an actual Spitfire, yeah, exactly. I mean, there are films like that. I mean, obviously, Where Eagles Dare, incredible film. And there was some other ones On the Life of Douglas Bader, which I remember watching as a kid. Various other films, The Cruel Sea, which is really, really good. And that's another one from that sort of period, black and white. And it's quite psychologically intense film, The Cruel Sea, I have to say, for the period when it was made. Yeah. It's really, really good. I also have fond memories of watching, because I was always big into Sherlock Holmes. I've still got somewhere the original book that I was given as a kid I used to read Sherlock Holmes from like the age of 10 onwards, with like reading the book and then with a dictionary next to me, because there were some words that I couldn't understand, and so I had to look them up in the dictionary. You should have seen the look on my mum's face when I came to her at 10 years old and managed to get a sentence in that used the word superfluous. She just looked at me just like, I'm sorry, what? But I've always been big into Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
And I used to watch a guy called Basil Rathbone, who was like one of the original Sherlock Holmes when film was around. And some of those old films I've got on a hard drive now, so I can watch them and be nostalgic. I like the new Sherlock Holmes, but I still think the best Sherlock Holmes was a gentleman called Jeremy Brett, who embodied it. And it was just that kind of storytelling, that kind of stuff I've always enjoyed. You know, like there are so many stories that are out there waiting to be told. You just have to find a way to tell them. I mean, my personal favorite writer is the man who wrote The West Wing, Aaron Sorkin. Just spectacularly brilliant. But also, he really struggles to write sometimes. You know, writer's block can really do a number on him. But then, you know, it's
happens
just
to
the thing.
Best, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've done multiple films for people. I've worked with people with a film I was literally the cameraman, so doing all the camera, and I've also obviously done events at big gaming events and things of that nature where I've run the camera for where they had Red Eye and Joe on the thing in front of the GoldenEye tank, which was just surreal but fantastic. Yeah, no, it wasn't Red Eye. It was Warwick. So it's Warwick and Joe in front of the tank. But I've also worked with Red Eye as well when I was using my Steadicam at the Gadget show. And so I'm big into the whole camera side of things. I love the Steadicam and all the kind of things that you can do with that. And it's just, there are so many ways to tell a story, which is why I for me, spectator mode in a game is so important. It's so important for me. Because, you know,
it gives definitely a unique angle. And going back to like your early Napoleonic Wars, I think that's why people were drawn to your channel, because no one had done that in Napoleonic Wars or Mount and Blade before. And that's why you have that native battle with so many views, because I think people had probably recorded themselves playing in those battles, but it gives such a huge perspective on it when you're zoomed out and you can see lines in the distance and things like that. And I think, yeah, going back to Bannerlord, I think if that spectator mode is so crucial to growing that feel.
I won't lie. I wish the spectator mode was like the one that you have in Counter-Strike, where you can record a demo and then you just play it back in the engine. And then when you play it back in the engine, you can position the camera anywhere during the course of those events and then record anything that happens during the course of that battle.
There is potentially that coming to Bannerlord, though, with their replay mode. Whether it's going to be full, like they can do full events or just small clips, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But if they can do it like I'm thinking, it means my videos will take probably a week to make.
But they'll be amazing because it will you get so many angles and things. I can't wait until
you know,
like
I mean, like classic moments where, I mean, I've had moments where I've tried to get the camera right in and you can literally get the slash over the top of the camera. You know, it's just those kind of shots. I mean, when I used to do parkour with the lads up in Chelmsford, I used to love getting shots where they jump from thing to thing, and I would actually be underneath the thing, and you see them just come flying through the air and just land straight on top of it, and it looked so amazing. Absolutely fantastic. And I have an eye for camera angles. In fact, when I did one on when I was working with Gfinity, I actually found that in the case of certain players, they were playing StarCraft 2.
Yeah.
If they had glasses on, I could actually get the camera over the top of the monitor, and I zoomed in far enough, and if I got the right angle, I could get the reflection of the game that they were playing in their glasses that you would see in the camera. And I remember two of the commentators, and they're like, whoa, look at that. Never seen that before. Because then you could see the game and what his eyes were flicking and focusing on.
Yeah.
It was just, and that became known as the signature Chad shot. Give us a signature Chad shot. Boom, there it was. You know, but it also meant that it was difficult because when a camera is zoomed out any movement, sort of 1 millimeter, 1 millimeter. When the camera's zoomed all the way in, 1 millimeter of movement would mean 10, 15 millimeters. So obviously I had advantageous belly to rest it on that made it a little bit easier. But these are the kind of things that I look for, the kind of shots. I mean, when I've done little sort of trailers and stuff like that, I've done shots where you see, somebody get murdered at the top of the ladder, and I've got the camera right down at the bottom as the body just goes thud in front of the camera, stuff like that.
Would you say when you're trying to cast, let's take a normal Napoleonic Wars Siege, for example, when you're casting that and you go into it, are you putting more priority on the words you say with your audio, or trying to get the shots first and then putting the words to the shots you're making?
It's the second part, yeah. I look for the shots, I look for the action that is occurring, and then commentate on what I see in the moment, essentially. It's a case of, I look to see where the battles are occurring, I look to see where the punch-ups are occurring, and then I focus my attention on that. If I see a lot of people moving in one location, or I see a lot of people moving in another direction, then I can focus on that. Part of the advantage of not streaming it means that people can't watch it and then get a stream snipe and get an advantage. It means that nobody can see what I'm focusing on until 2 days after the line battle or the event or anything like that. And for me, sometimes getting the right shot is quite important, because it just plays into a nice moment that you can get when the players are playing together and stuff like that, and stupid moments as well that always occur in the Napoleonic Wars, where you'll just see a mass punch up between people while they're resting between rounds and things like that. So I'll sometimes unpause the recording if I see something happening, to then put it in as a little bit of a blip outtake or something like that, just to show the silliness that occurs. But for me, the camera leads what's going on the battle, what gets my attention. I then commentate on what I see, but I also try and pull it out sometimes to kind of show the overall battle. That's part of the problem that Mountain Blade Warband has, is it doesn't really show the movement of the regiments together.
Yeah,
that would be a nice thing to be able to see. So you can see a movement of the regiments, how they're moving in relation to each other. And so therefore the strategy that they might start employing, because what you want to be able to do as a commentator is to not only describe what you see, but also then describe what you think they're going to do. Yeah. And more important, why you think they're going to do it.
Would you say then, so you mentioned experience of filming live events in sort of with esports and things like that, it's pretty much the same thing as casting a Mount and Blade battle or an online battle. You are doing the camera work for that, even if it's in the game. Did that come and help you when it came to doing in-game casting then?
Yeah, because you kind of look for the sort of cinematic moments, the moments of action. Sometimes if you want to get in close to the action to to show the back and forth of the battle and stuff, sometimes you want to remain outside if they're still in a big line. Once it starts to get down to a smaller line and they're more likely to go into melee, then you can focus and get in closer. But I also like to mention all the names, because obviously I have a reputation for hideously brutalizing people's names. And so that's part of the fun of it as well. See how badly I can pronounce some of these names.
I remember there was a guy in my artillery regiment who I was a friend with in real life. I went to school with him, and he was called Bombardier Boho. And I remember one of the first times I was in one of your videos was I was the 16th captain leader, and you zoomed in on our artillery regiment, and you're like, "Oh, it's Bombardier Boho."
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to the guys that are in the VA Guard, and so the guys in the VA Guard who are all French. They like to tease me, but they say that my pronunciations of their names cause them physical pain.
Well, that's what you've got to do to the French.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, they're great guys. They all, they always supported and enjoy my videos and stuff like that. So I always try and say nice things about them when I see them, even though normally it's about 30 seconds before they all get wiped out by a cannonball. But,
that's not your fault.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's something that also becomes known as commentator's curse.
I've seen that a lot. You spectate someone,
them, bang,
dead instantly.
It's hysterical if it wasn't so annoying, because it's like, I'm trying to focus on something, goddammit, please stay alive.
Yeah.
But I think my experience with the camera just informs me and makes it easier for me to find certain what would be regarded as cinematic moments of entertainment, silly moments, close in melee moments, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, quickly before we finish this off, I just want you to give a quick talk to the audience about almost like a promotional spot. What are you doing on your channel these days? What will they find if they come over?
If they come over, they will find a lot of Evil Genius 2, which is...
I can see your box in the background, actually. There.
Yes. Yes.
Is that the collector's edition?
It is, yes. That is the collector's edition over there. That is Maximilian, who I'm playing a series with at the moment. And that's a regular series that's going out 3 times a week. And there are other videos that are coming, but it's mostly Evil Genius 2. But you can look back at the 2,500 videos that are on my channel. Yeah. I mean, there was a period when I first started that I did a video a day for 3 years.
Wow. I've done a video a day for 2 months and it's taken its toll. So
yeah, this is why I've got no hair. So yeah, you're not far behind.
Maybe I need to stop.
Yeah, exactly. Keep it while you've still got fringe. But so yeah, you'll see all sorts of things on there. Commentaries, old games. You can look at the likes of Rome 2, Napoleon Total War. Look back at some of the series relating to that, and obviously lots of commentaries on both native and Napoleonic Wars commentaries, and also there's some Battlefield 4 stuff on there as well.
It's safe to say you've got a backlog that if people necessarily aren't involved in Evil Genius and that sort of thing, there's going to be something.
Oh, yes.
Well, thank you very much for coming. As I mentioned, once finally not in lockdown at all, and if I can get this set up as a proper thing, it'll be great to have you back on again and have like an in-person chat conversation.
That would be very cool.
That'd be good. But other than that, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great. It's been a good chat to you about stuff that isn't just games or playing stuff like Stick Fight with you.
Oh, I'm sorry, but punching you in the face on Stick Fight is probably one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had in my entire life.
Strangely enough, you're not the only person that said that, which is maybe...
Yeah, it only gets bad when your girlfriend starts to say that.
Luckily, she doesn't know about that game yet.
Oh, that's all right then. You're
keeping her out of the game stuff, because otherwise she'll start to take her anger out.
That's I've seen that happen. I've played games with entire families who used to play games together. I know multiple friends who have said who got their girl into gaming as opposed to game into girling, basically, and then couldn't get back on their PC because she was always on there playing games. So yeah,
it's
a dangerous road. It's a dangerous road.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. I hope everybody has enjoyed this podcast. If you haven't already, go and check out Chadtopia. You're on, of course, YouTube. Are you still streaming on Twitch, or are you streaming mostly on YouTube now?
Yes, also on Twitch.
Okay, well, on Twitch as well.
Same thing, yes.
And yeah, but other than that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
Goodbyes.